Ben Midgley, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So just a little bit of background for viewers. So you're new to politics, but not new to Maine. You grew up in southern Maine and currently live in Kennebunkport.
Yes.
You got your start, as I understand it, in fitness pretty much at the ground floor by actually cleaning fitness equipment at a gym in order to get a membership. Is that right?
Yep.
And fast forward a few decades, you were president of Planet Fitness and then CEO of Crunch Fitness. So I guess I'd like to start there. How do you go from running two national large fitness organizations to wanting to run for governor?
I think the most driving aspect of that is I grew up in the state, right? And my character was built in Maine. My wife's from Lyman, Maine. And our kids all grew up here, they all went to school here, and really made them who they are. It was a wonderful place to grow up. And as you grow up and you go through different phases in your life, you see the impact that decisions made at the government level can affect your life and the lives of others. And over the last 7 years or so, I've felt that it's become much more challenging for folks to live the life that they want to in Maine, and that was really the most motivating factor. And being at a point in my life where my kids are old enough, first of all, to understand what's going on. I probably wouldn't have done this if my kids were too much younger. Our youngest is 16. And having the time, I'm retired now, so this is 100% of my focus, and having some personal resources that we can also use to help with the process. It felt like this is the right time for us personally and for the state to try to make a difference. And if you don't try to make a difference, then you really can't complain.
So you're one of several Republican candidates for governor who is running on your business background. So I guess my question would be, what's different about your experience that would make you a better businessman to governor, make that transition better?
Sure. Well, I mean, each business person has a different background. My business was built from scratch. Right? We started with no clubs, took a brand that was in bankruptcy, pre my joining the brand, and then I was brought in to fix that brand, and we started with no franchisees, no vendors, anything, and over 15 years built it to the #1 fitness franchise in the country. We had 500 locations in 46 states, 6 countries, had 3 million members, did over $1 billion in revenue, and created 15,000 jobs nationwide. So I've got experience working in 46 different states, so it's easy to see the difference with states that are very supportive of business versus states that are not supportive of business. Obviously, those states have more businesses in them and they do better. States that don't support business, it's just harder to get to hit the ground running. And having international experience, that exposes you to a lot of different things. And building something from scratch also gives you a different view than perhaps if you took over another business or something from that perspective. And it's a very diverse background. I was also, like I said, the president of Planet Fitness for a while there. So it's given me the experience to understand not just the business aspect of it, but job creation, strategic management, strong financial management skills, culture building, people management, all the things that an executive position like the governor's office requires. So,
Staying on that same theme of business, so I know that in the past, some business leaders who've gone on to become governor, like former Governor Paul LePage, they've found that transition or the differences between the business world and the government world frustrating. You're technically the chief executive of the state, but you can't just go in and wholesale restructure agencies. You can't fire everybody because you have to deal with the state legislature, with unions, with constituent groups. How would you juggle that?
Well, I think that's part of the process, right? I mean, I don't think the goal should be to go in and control everything, right? I mean, part of doing things right is making sure you have all the best ideas from all the best people, right? So if you go in as a new governor, or if you're a CEO for that matter, drawing an analogy there, your job is not to have answers for everything. Your job is to put the smartest people in the jobs that align with their skill set. So you want the best people doing the jobs. that you don't know everything about. So you put someone who's in charge of DAFs or public safety or conservation or what have you, and then you get those folks all working in tandem to bring the best solutions to the table. As well, you need to work with the legislature, right? You may have all three bodies of government, you may have some, but in any case, you do that through a collaborative approach, get people to the point that you have the best solutions for the most amount of people, and then you get the inertia there to get those passed and bring positive change for the people in the state. But it's primarily culture building. You know, as I've grown up in business, culture has always proven to be the most important single factor in terms of getting things done. You don't always get everything that you want to get done, but if you do things right and you respect other people's opinions and you listen to everybody, over time people understand your intentions are where they should be. And then whether you have a divided government or it's all one party, let's say we've got some Democrats owning a couple of the bodies of government, if we get wins, we're getting wins for everyone who lives in their areas too, right? So over time, everyone is doing better, and that's ideally what brings people together going forward.
I know one of the big things that you've talked about in your campaign is strengthening Maine's economy. Can you give a few, just in a minute or two, a few specific examples of how you could go about strengthening the economy as governor? Sure.
One of the challenges you have in the state right now is if you've looked at the most recent economic forecast for jobs, there's zero forecasted job growth right now through the Mills administration through 2029. It's a pretty bad number going all the way through 2029. Without having jobs and a robust economy in the state, it's going to be very hard to turn any of these cost issues around, right? Because without the jobs, you don't have the opportunity for folks to support themselves. The state doesn't make taxes from that standpoint, and people can't be gainfully employed. We already have roughly 30% of the state receiving some sort of welfare support. So we're in a tricky situation. Without the jobs, you can't do any positive changes. So you've got a lot of things keeping businesses out of the state right now. One, for example, is electricity costs. It's incredibly expensive. You just had a mill closing today, or they're announcing they're closing in Milo, right? You don't want to see that. $20,000 to $40,000 a month electric bill. So that can be fixed. There's some policy decisions around that you can fix. You've got a lot of folks right now that are receiving significant benefits in the state of Maine. The average welfare recipient is getting $40,000 worth of benefits. Maine's about 5th in the country from that standpoint. The average welfare recipient gets about $25,000 in benefits. And that's nothing against folks that are on the system. I've been on the system, right? But what it is, it creates a barrier for those folks to go in and take a job that may help them do better. Because what we have in Maine is a welfare system that essentially traps you in that situation. If you make too much money, you lose all your benefits. It's called the cliff. Have you heard of that?
Yep.
So if you can't get out of that situation, you're essentially stuck there. So we've got to create upward mobility for folks. So you create a bridge for folks to do better, pay into the system a little bit, and then you help them off the system, not by taking away their benefits or just cutting a budget line, but allowing them to do better until they don't need that, right? Then you strengthen the workforce, you lower the costs of electricity for the businesses. Our tax burden is too high for businesses, and this millionaire's tax that we just passed is also going to hit a lot of pass-through businesses. And you've got 135,925 regulations on the books. It's very challenging for businesses to navigate that environment, and you need to have a little bit better customer service for businesses too. A lot of folks are complaining that they're calling into the state to get help with business licenses or what have you, and they're not picking up the phone after 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So there's all sorts of things you can do on a broad level and a smaller level to incentivize businesses to get going in Maine.
I want to look ahead to the November election. I know you have to win the primary first, but I've heard you talk about several times that the reality is that whoever wins the Republican nomination is going to need independents to win in November.
Yep, very important.
Just because that's the reality of the numbers here in Maine.
Yep, that's the math.
Are less than a third of voters. What are you doing to reach out to independents?
Well, campaigns go in stages, right? So the primary focus right now is to get through the primary. So at this moment, you're talking to folks in your own party. The same thing Democrats are doing, and the same thing. Well, independents are trying to reach out a little bit more broader, right? But then they've got to cut through the Democratic candidate, initiatives and the Republican candidate initiatives. But right now, we're focused on winning the primary, and then when you go through to the general, you're speaking in the same way because the same issues affect the same people, but you just have to make sure your message is, a little more broad, a little more all-encompassing, because if you look at it right now, look, I've met a lot of Democrat folks that are business owners that are really challenged with the way business is in the state of Maine. Same with independent voters. They're dealing with the same electricity costs. They're dealing with the same challenges that other Mainers are dealing with. So it's just important, I think, to go in there and provide them the solutions in a very balanced and easy to understand way. But you can't just go into a general election and say, I think this is a problem, don't you think it's a problem too? Or I think we need to change that, don't you think we should change that? You need to provide significant solutions for people that they can understand, and then they'll ideally gravitate towards your message and get you over the finish line.
Yeah, and this is a semi-open primary this year, so independents can participate in the two primaries.
Yes.
Is that a factor in the Republican race, you think?
I think historically, you only get a small percentage of independents that vote in the primaries. I've still talked to plenty of independents that don't know that, right? It's the same, there's a little bit of confusion around that like there is around ranked choice voting. You could talk to any number of voters and they probably couldn't explain to you how ranked choice voting works. It's just a tricky thing. So I think that's a bit of voter education and how much are they seeing your messaging. You do a lot of communication over social media, which is primarily targeted to your party, right? So Republicans aren't necessarily receiving Democratic messages and vice versa. So you do need to make sure that they're hearing what you're trying to say, but that's really going to be primarily through your marketing, which means you have to have significant enough marketing budget to be on television, different social media measures, radio, print, things like that. So that message will get to independent voters as you get closer to the primary, and hopefully it'll influence more to take part in the vote.
You were a strong supporter of Governor Paul LePage, correct? Right? When he was governor.
Yes. Yeah.
And I know that your team has members of Governor LePage's former team, as well as Lauren's, his daughter's working with you. How would a Midgley administration be different from a LePage administration?
No, I think
given your similar business background.
Stylistically, I think Paul did wonderful things for the state. From a business standpoint, I think we're very similar. You have to be pro-business. From the standpoint of helping folks off of the welfare system, Paul was a big proponent of giving folks a step-up option to get off of that. In terms of being different, I think it's just your style and your approach. What I hear most about me is calm but assertive, right? I have a different business background than Paul did, so I approach things slightly differently than he would, maybe a little bit stronger on the culture building side, but structurally, the fundamental aspects of what Paul did were really good for the state.
One of the other topics I've heard you and other Republican candidates talk about, of course, is immigration. You've pledged to crack down on sanctuary city policies and reduce welfare benefits to non-citizens. But as I'm sure you know, there are leaders within the business community, including the Maine State Chamber of Commerce, that say that immigrants are really important for filling vacant positions and are important to Maine's economy. Are they wrong in that respect?
Well, I think it would be great if they had the opportunity to work and support themselves. The challenge is when you have one of the lowest income states in the country with one of the highest tax burdens, right? And you have these, I'd say, dismal job forecasts, projections. You have a state that really can't afford to be paying for all those benefits, right? That's why we also need to shrink the Maine care system, the overall welfare requirements in the state of Maine to give people an opportunity to do better for themselves. So if you're in the country illegally, that's something you have to work through, on your own through the process. But in terms of Maine workers paying for every aspect of those folks' lives, I don't think that's fair to Mainers. If they can support themselves, I think that's terrific. If you're going to do a drawdown on benefits, it would have to be a very well forecasted drawdown so people can plan and get into another situation or get into gainful employment. But in either case, you've got to take that burden off of folks in the state of Maine. We're one of only 7 states in the country that pays that, and we just don't have the tax base to be able to afford that.
And you talked a little bit earlier just about the Maine Care program and kind of a bridge to Maine Care.
Very important.
Is that something that you can do executively, or would you need legislation to do that?
You'd need a federal waiver to do that. The state's really been talking about it for a long time. I think you've had a lot of Democratic resistance to that. I think they prefer to keep folks on state support, more of a universal health care approach. But the challenge is when you have that many people on Maine Care, and I think it's been surfaced recently, right? They tried to cap the amount that hospitals could charge to 2 times the Maine Care rate, if you recall that. And then the hospitals came out very hard against that. They said, if you're going to cap us at 2 times what we charge MaineCare, we're going to go out of business because we make our money on the private market. So one of the issues when you have so many folks on the MaineCare system is the hospitals are trying to charge more to the individual markets to make up for the difference. So you need to make the healthcare market in the state more competitive. We used to have 30 or so insurance providers in the state. Now we have 6. And they have a hard time making money in the state. There's several things you can do to put that back in place, but I don't want to run over time on the answer there for you.
Ben Midgley, thank you for coming in and speaking with us.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.